Hey guys, let us get started with Duel 75, which is also deck request number 13. Yeah, I checked back yesterday when the last deck request was, which was the Psychic deck, 15th of November. That was almost 2 months ago. Test weekend in the way, then the big essay at school, then the deck request was to have a deck that can easily summon number 22 Fran Ken. So I've been searching for a long time to really get this deck request done the way it was requested. But in the end, I just couldn't really find a deck that could, there were a couple of decks that could quite easily summon it, but Fran Ken was never able to be a main card that is summoned often. This deck, which is a Dark World deck, can definitely summon it using Grapha and the 1 Malefic Stardust that I have. But yeah, I just don't summon it that often, so I'm sorry for CrunchDollarG who requested it, but I talked to CrunchDollarG yesterday, and he agreed to the fact that it might be difficult to have it out. So he was fine with just having a deck that can quite easily summon him, like the Dark Worlds. And then I just go with that. I could have actually summoned number 22 Fran Ken in this video, which I kind of should have done since that was the original request. But as you'll see later in the duel, I got a lot of options. It was going really well. But yeah, I decided against using Fran Ken. I just decided against it. Well, not necessarily against it. I never really thought of it, which I should have really done that. I should have really gone for that and gone for number 22 Fran Ken because that was the request. But I talked to CrunchDollarG just before doing this narration, just after the duel, because CrunchDollarG will be watching the second half of this duel. And it was unfortunate, but CrunchDollarG was fine with it, and well, we're just gonna go with what it is. And I haven't actually used this Dark World deck yet, so let's go. Right, I got 3 Reckless Greeds in my first hand. All of them. I could have not used all of them and then use card destruction first by setting Dark Hole. But I'm like, nah. I'm gonna use all 3 and see what my options are. And guys, I realize this is only my second turn, but this is the final turn of the duel. Yeah, I personally, I don't like playing Dark Worlds too much, at least not when I started playing them with this deck. But they've grown on to me. I'm quite liking them now, and this duel will definitely prove how deadly the Dark Worlds can be. I didn't start off with any monsters, but with 3 Reckless Greeds and a lot of drawing power, yeah, I can get somewhere, and you are going to see. Because I'm going to get a really big field out and have a lot of options remaining in my hand. Okay, so what do I do here? Well, I guess I'll just play the 3rd Reckless Greed and draw 2 more cards, which are another Bro and a second Dark World Dealings. So I thought, I'm going to get some more drawing options, so I'll use the first Dark World Dealings to get a Bro discarded and draw extra. I do that also so I can use Gates next turn, next turn as my next move to banish something, because I didn't actually have a Fiend yet in my grave. And here I get Snow. I'm like, perfect! Because I want to get rid of all 3 of the cards on his field. The Seal should have already left the field. Well, because I played my field spell. We both forgot about that, but I'll be telling him in a second. Now here I'm like, well, I'm going to discard Snow and get Grapha. Hey, Grapha! I was like, why not use Upstart first? And then I draw into a second Gates, which is super nice, because I'm going to discard a second Fiend in a moment, so I can just use the second Gates to keep on drawing and discarding and keeping it going. At this moment, he's not really afraid or angry just yet. He is going to beg for mercy, literally. And the fact that I'm laughing, sorry, James. I just really went for it. So I get rid of Grapha and take out a Solemn Warning because I know it's a warning and I don't want to get warninged when I summon Grapha. Although it only really costs me a monster that I return to my hand because Grapha will still stay in the graveyard, but Alright, I now get rid of Bro, discard Snow and draw, and then I decide to add not Grapha, not Gates, I decided to add Beige. I only have one Beige in this, but as I'll be telling in the deck profile after this, because if you remember, after a deck request, always a deck profile, you can just discard Beige, summon it, and then return it to your hand as, well, you use it for Grapha. You use it to summon Grapha. That's the really only reason Beige is in there. I could have used Gold or Silva as well, but they're mostly only there to, well, be discarded, summoned, and then returned for Grapha. So I could have gone for either 700 more attack points or for the chance to Xyz with Snow. And I went with Snow. I haven't really Xyzed with Snow at all, so I might change it to Gold or Silva later. But, you know, alright, here I decide to go for my normal summon because I have Snow banished. I'm like, let's go get it back. I know I have another tour guide in my deck, and also another bro, but I do decide to go with tour guide because just in case I draw into bro, I can just discard it to draw another card. Because at this moment I'm feeling I can OTK this. So I'm not summoning bro with tour guide so that I may draw into it and use its effect. Now here I use Levier, which can detach an Xyz material to target a level 4 or below banished monster and summon it. So I get Snow back, and we are far from done. And here I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's go have some fun. I set Dark Hole, set Judgment, set Card Destruction, and then played Drag Down into the Grave, which have both players look at their opponent's hand and choose one card that will be discarded. Now, my opponent looks at my hand and decides that I should discard Snow. I didn't really mind either, that's why I set everything, so he's forced to discard something that is very good for me. I don't want him to get the Heretics, because he's using Heretics, and would he get another turn, that card would be able to stop me, most probably. Or at least get him the combo cards he needed. Here he decides to discard my Snow. I'm like, okay, discard Snow. He may have chosen to discard Snow, but it was still my spell effect that did it, so I only get the search effect and not the summon. But I think, yeah, what should I search for? I don't really want to go for another Dark World Dealings or something. I decided to go for a second Grapha, because I know I can keep discarding. So with Grapha, I can just destroy his Erratic and then summon it after. So I play Skill Drain face down, so that I'll only have my Dark Worlds in my hand, and then Card Destruction. And with Card Destruction, I discard all 3 of the cards in my hand, Beige, which can summon itself, Bro, which can get me a draw, and Grapha, which can destroy something. And I do believe they are all mandatory. That's what I went with here anyway. I believe Snow Search Effect is the only optional one in Dark Worlds. I'm not really sure, but since the order of the chain doesn't really matter, it doesn't really matter. Alright, so I decided to go with Bro and Chainlink 3, Grapha on 2, so Grapha destroys Esset. And here he's really begging for mercy, because he realizes he doesn't have a chance. Alright, now I summon Beige, and I'm like, I could return Beige or Snow to the hand. I'm like, which one? I could return Snow to use its search effect, but nah, I already have a Snow in my hand. So I return that and go for Grapha. Now here I have a lot of options. This is the point where I could have, possibly should have, just overlaid the Graphas into Franken to go with the deck request, and then use Monster Reborn, anything like that, to summon something and just go for a game. I was thinking he might have Gores, just maybe, and then he can just stop me in my OTK and then may be able to turn around. And I did want to win the duel, so that's why I didn't go for Franken, I guess. So Grunch Dollar G, I'm sorry. You're in the watchers chat in this video right now. I'm sorry I didn't go for Franken. I promise that sometime soon I will be dueling with this deck again, and then I will be bringing out Franken. Let that be a promise. The next time I use this Dark World deck, I will summon Franken in the video. If that is not the case, and I totally forget this promise, please just tell me in the comments and just I don't know, just make some random sounds and comments and that I forgot about it and stuff. Because here I promise that we'll be summoning Franken in the next video. It is in the deck, and you'll be seeing that in the deck profile in about 15 seconds from now. I'll be starting up the deck profile, so I'll see you guys in a moment. Konnichiwa! Welcome to the Dark World deck profile. Why did I start with saying konnichiwa? Well, in my last video, one of my viewers was complaining that I didn't say anything in Japanese. So, here you go, Danny. I said something in Japanese. Right, let's start us off with Dark Worlds. You pretty much have to have 3 graphics. It's the boss monster, can destroy something, can easily be summoned from the graveyard. Yeah, you want 3 graph in a Dark World deck. Snow is the searcher, so a basic Dark World deck will usually have 3 snow, sometimes 2, but I run 3. I have Bro to get extra draws, because with the extra draws from Bro, you can get a lot of options and a lot of stuff that you can play with, which is really good. 2 tour guides. Most Dark Worlds, also last formats, only use 2 tour guides, even when it was at 3. Most ran only 2, so for Dark World that wasn't really any issue. It can summon itself, but also Bro, because Bro is also a level 3 Fiend. 1 beige to summon Grapha. Once you draw into beige or search for beige with snow like it did in this duel, you can keep using it for Grapha. That's really all it's used for. Sometimes you may have to normal summon it if you don't have anything to discard it. You might want to normal summon it so you can bring it back to the hand and then Grapha. But usually you can discard it, have its effect, summon, return to hand, Grapha, and keep that up. I run 1 Malefic Stardust because, well, I like it. It can, well, defend your gates. It's an easy level 8 summon, and well, it makes sure the gates doesn't get destroyed. And when you want to, you can overlay it with Grapha to go into a rank 8 Xyz. I have chosen Giant Killer, Heliopolis, and Franken for this deck, but you could decide to use others when you want to. This is my personal preference. I have 3 Dark World Dealing. Well, I didn't really explain Gates. Well, you should know what Gates is. Dark World is definitely meta. All Fiend monsters gain 300 attack and defense. All of my monsters in the main deck, except Malefic Stardust, are Fiend. And then, I don't think any of these guards are actually Fiend. Yeah, Tempo is actually Fiend. But that's really the only other monster that gets the boost. And Gorge is Fiend, I guess. Its token is not. Its token is a fairy. But yeah, that's only an side deck card. But yeah, that's Gates. You can banish a Fiend from your grave, discard 1, draw. The banish is really the only cost there is, because the discarding isn't really a cost for you, because the discarding for Dark Worlds always gets you something positive. Pretty much always. Graphic can destroy something, Snow can search, Bro can draw, Beige can summon. There's a couple other Dark Worlds that you could use. Only when you have to, you'll discard Tour Guide to get a new draw, but usually you won't do that because you want a card effect from one of these guys, and it's really good. Dark World Dealings, draw, then discard. You probably already have an option for them, but you can, if you want, discard the card you drew to get a really good effect. Drag down into the grave, as I explained in the duel, both players look at each other's hands, choose a card to discard, and discard it. Your opponent may choose what card you discard, but it's still your own spell, so you don't get the second effect of the Dark World monsters. Upstart Goblin, just to get an extra draw, and the opponent may gain 1,000 life points, but the extra draws you get from Upstart Goblin and from Bro, they really give you so many more options, as you saw in this duel, that you can just completely obliterate them and OTK them, even if they gain 1,000 life points. That actually happened in this duel. Guard Destruction, I don't see myself using it that often because I sometimes have some spells and traps in my hand that I don't want to discard. But if I have like a couple of Dark Worlds in my hand, in this case there were 3 and 3 different ones, which were good ones, I just sit everything else, which were Judgment, Dark Hole, and I don't even remember what the other card was. No, wait, it was Card Destruction, so Judgment and Dark Hole, and then just play Card Destruction. That way, I only discard the cards that I want to discard, and I can just use the rest later. Foolish Burial, usually used to get Graph into the grave so you can use its effect immediately. I barely ever send anything else. I have sent Beige once before because I didn't have a banishing target for Gates, but usually it's Grapha so you can use its effect to summon. Allure to draw 2 cards and banish dark. All cards in here are dark. Heavy Storm, quite obvious, it should be anyway. Get rid of spells and traps. I don't run any more MST because, well, Usually I don't need it because I can get rid of cards with Grapha too. Monster Reborn to get a monster back from the grave. That is quite helpful. I could have used it in this duel after I overlaid Grapha and Grapha into Franken and then used Monster Reborn on something good. Decided not to at that time. Darkhold to destroy the field. Reckless Greed to draw extra. You might skip 2 draw phases, but as I said before with Upstart and with Burrow, the options you get, you can keep going with them. And you can keep drawing through Bro, through Gates, through Dark World Dealings, through Upstart, through Drag Down to the Grave. There's so many drawing options that the fact that you don't draw for 2 turns doesn't really matter. The fact that you get those 2 extra cards can really help you. I also have 2 Mind Crush. You didn't actually see that in that duel, but with Mind Crush you declare 1 card name, and if that card is in your opponent's hand, the opponent has to discard all copies of it. But if the opponent does not have that, you discard 1 random card from your hand. Usually you would want to use this when you have just seen your opponent add something to their hand with, let's say, Reinforcements of the Army. And they added Elemental Hero Stratos. And you know that that Elemental Hero Stratos will be a big problem if they get to summon it and use its effect. So you'll use Mind Crush right after it's added. When the game state is still closed, you use Mind Crush, boom, and declare Elemental Hero Stratos. They have to discard it. Although you don't always have to make the opponent discard something. You can just say something random that you know they won't have, like probably they won't have a Herakthi, like the creator god that is summoned with all 3 of the Egyptian gods. Very unlikely that they'll have that, or like Haniwa, or like any card that people never use. Yamatana Dragon Scroll. It's one of the oldest cards, and I still remember it. I quite like it. But yeah, you can discard, if you want to discard one of your cards, you can do that as well. So that, let's say you have Beige, a Bro, and Snow in your hand, and you say something random like Haniwa, and they don't have it. You randomly discard one of your own, but you still get a good effect from it. So not getting the card right isn't always a bad thing. Torrential Tribute to just destroy everything. Only run 1 because I really feel only 1 is necessary. Deck Devastation Virus. You tribute Dark with 2,000 or more attack. Usually I use Grapha for this, but Malefic Stardust can be used just fine. And then you check your opponent's hand, all monsters they control and draw, and destroy all monsters with 1,500 or less attack. And in the current game, that's quite a lot. Most of the Insectors go down with that. Most of the wind-ups are taken out by that. Some of the Dark Worlds. Only, Tour Guide Bro, and not really that much of the Dark Worlds. And they are destroyed, not discarded. So let's say they draw it later after Virus has already resolved. They draw it, it's destroyed, not discarded. So the Dark Worlds won't actually get their effects. Skill Drain to negate the opponent's monster effects, because on the field, my monsters don't actually have effects. You know, only Tour Guide and Malefic Stardust have that. The rest, well, don't. Well, my Exeges mostly do, but I don't go into Exeges all that often, actually. 1 Solemn Judgment to stop stuff. Usually in most decks, I actually prefer Warning over Judgment. But since Judgment can be used on any spell or trap, and Warning has to have the spell or trap summon something, it's not always the better option. And here, I don't really need Warning. I just need spell and trap stops with Solemn Judgment. You barely ever use it on summons in this duel. It's in this deck. Usually it's spells and traps. Then the final card is the Use Revolution is over. It used to be Starlight Road, but after making my extra deck, I only decided to put in 1 Stardust Dragon, and I kind of want to keep that Stardust Dragon in there for Malefic Stardust. I'm like, I don't want to summon it and then not be able to do anything with Malefic Stardust. Now, I could technically take out Chimeritic Fortress Dragon, put in a Starlight Road and the 2nd Stardust, but I didn't really want to do that. Chimeritic Fortress Dragon can't do anything much anyway. It's used against machines, but it requires a Cyber Dragon on the opponent's field, which usually in machine decks they don't run. It's usually like Machina, Karakuri, Girya. They don't usually run Cyber Dragons, but that's why you have Cyber Dragons, 2 Cyber Dragons, or sometimes even 3 in your side deck if you run Fortress. Because Fortress can take fusion materials from both sides of the field. They just have to be machine, and 1 Cyber Dragon has to be among them. But since the opponent doesn't usually run Cyber Dragon, as long as they run machines and you can summon a Cyber Dragon, you can use your Cyber Dragon and then let's say their Machina Gearframe, Gear Gigant X, and Machina Fortress, send them all to the grave, get a Chimeric Fortress Dragon out, and then has 4,000 attack. Boom! And you get rid of all their monsters. It's an anti-machine monster if you can just get a Cyber Dragon out, which is really good. But yeah, so instead of Starlight Dragon, I went to the Huge Revolution is over. One, because it's a counter trap and not a regular trap, which helps. And this one actually works against cards like Direwolf and Scrap Dragon. And they only destroy one card you control, but since they also can destroy a card the opponent controls, Huge Revolution is Over still works, where Starlight Road doesn't. And Huge Revolution is Over cannot be stopped to Solemn Warning, where Starlight Road can. So that's the advantages of this card. That's why I went with it. I do have 3 MSTs in the side deck, would I feel the opponent really has some dangerous traps. 2 Royal Decree to stop traps, although I run quite a lot of traps, so I don't usually side into Royal Decree, but if they're really dependent on their traps, I will switch around a lot of different cards to be able to use Decree. I have 2 Gozen matches in my side deck, because pretty much all of my monsters are dark. Not most of my extra decks aren't, but then again, as I said, I don't Xyz summon often, so Gozen match can lock them into one attribute where I can just keep on playing just fine because I pretty much all run darks. Dark Smog, just one of them. Works pretty well. Don't use it all that often. Mirror Force to destroy attacking monsters, but Torrential is usually the better choice. Gores, because it's Gores, it's a good card, and it's Fiend, so it gets a boost, but it's just because it's Gores and it's good. 2 Cyber Dragons to work with Chimeric Fortress against machines. Morphing Jar to discard and draw to get 5 new cards to get a lot more options, and to get card effects from Bro, Snow, Grapha, Beige, anything you discard. Then Maxi for fighting against decks that special summon a lot, like Wind-Ups or Heretics. Now for the extra deck, I have Chimeric Fortress Dragon, already explained that. Stardust to be banished from Levic. Zenmains as a basic rank 3 Xyz. Tempo. Quite a few people use that, not too often. I haven't actually used this card that often, but it works very well against cards like Zenmains and Gachi and stuff, because you can just steal one of their Xyz materials. You can steal it from any Xyz monster at that. Levier to get back cards from the opponent's banished zone, like their Rabbit, so they can't get it back. But usually Rabbit is weak and you can't use it yourself. So usually Levier in this deck is used to get back monsters that were banished by Gates, which in this duel I went with Snow. And then I have Leviathan Dragon as another basic rank 3 Xyz, and then Acid Golem. Don't use Acid Golem much, but sometimes when I'm in a pinch, late in the duel, I just want to get really high attack power out immediately, then I go for Acid Golem. But the fact that it has quite a lot of negative effects, I don't use it often. I like Gaga Cowboy. Almost never use them for its attack position effect. I've used it once, which then was mirror forced, so that didn't really help too much. It's usually in there to just inflict that final bit of damage with its defense position effect, which inflicts 800 points of damage. That's usually what it's for. Black Ship of Corns, mostly there to get rid of Gachi and Zenmains and such cards. Papilloperative to flip over a monster they have, like let's say they have Spirit Reaper or something and a couple of more monsters. If you use Black Ship on Spirit Reaper, you still won't possibly you won't be able to get rid of the other monsters, but if you use Papilloperative on the Spirit Reaper, you can just keep on attacking the Spirit Reaper because it's not destroyed by battle, and you can deal a massive amounts of damage. Utopia to, well, as a basic rank 4 and it negates attacks. Gemnite Pearl to be a little stronger than Utopia, although I just might take out Pearl for a second Stardust and then switch out this for a second Starlight. I'll just see after some more testing, some more playing. My preferences might change. I quite like Giant Killer, or Giant Grinder as it will be called in the TCG, because it can destroy special summon monsters. It doesn't really happen often that when I have the chance to summon it, that the opponent has Xyz monsters, because only when it's an Xyz monster that you destroy with its effect do you deal damage. But Giant Killer is still very good to take with special summoned monsters, like the Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon and that Fusion monster, Synchro monsters. Giant Killer can, well, kill them. Then I have Heliopolis. Would I really want to destroy something? Again, I don't really go into it often because Grapha, you need 2 Graphas for it, or a Grapha and a Malefic. And with Gates on the field, Grapha is at the same attack power as Heliopolis. So I don't go for it often, but it does happen sometimes when I want to use it. It helps. I think it's quite a good card. And then, of course, Franken, because it was part of the deck request, requires 2 level 8 Darks and then has 4,500 attack. So that's like really big beater guy. I've never actually used its effect, but well, tell me, has any of you guys made a serious deck in which Franken is included, in which there was a duel at some point where you use its effect where it was really helpful to use its effect? Because you negate one face-up monster the opponent controls, you negate their effects, but Franken then has really weak defense. Have you been able to find out something that helps Franken in that way? I haven't just yet. I haven't had any occasion where I did that, but yeah. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this duel. I hope you enjoyed this deck request. I'm going to try to get these things done a little quicker now because 2 months of hiatus almost on this. Sorry about that, but yeah, school gets priority, and I've been really busy with Yu-Gi-Oh! Burst and other stuffies as well, and I have a lot of things in my mind. I want to pass my exams this year, so yeah, bye-bye. See you guys in the next video for Duel 76, quite possibly, and quite possibly also deck request. How much did I say it was? Deck request 14, I think, is the next one, which will, by the way, be a deck with only level 3 and lower monsters. I have to contact that person to ask if I'm actually allowed to use rank 3 Xyzs. But no, they only said level 3 and below, so they might not. They might be fine with Xyzs, but since they don't have levels, they might not. I'll have to ask that person, but yeah. A deck with only level 3 and below monsters, so it's a monster mash with that, or they mean like only the monsters, but the monsters have to be level 3 and below. They might want me to use spells and traps. I'm getting distracted. Have a good day, and I'll just ask that person what the deck request is about. See you later.